Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies, babies, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. What's up? Friday.
You in a good mood over there or something?
I am in a very good mood today. I'm in a very, very, very good mood today.
Okay.
The Commanders made a home run hire today, and I'm not just being a homer about the whole thing. They did. They got a very, very good established person who's been in 3 winning organizations, including the one that's been close to a standard bearer in the NFC to take over their front office today. What's not to like about that? Mm-hmm. You know, they were clearly going to change the structure of the organization. That was from the get-go. This was, as if you've been listening here for the last week or so, this was the person they had targeted for a long time.
Yep.
The addition of Bob Myers to the advisory council to pick a GM and then potentially help host, get a head coach was earmarked and too on the nose to try to get Adam Peters over the hump and accept the position and take it, and he has. He will be the lead. I know currently the title is general manager. He is the de facto president of football operations. There will be nobody above him, is my understanding. So he will have the final say. Who works underneath him, that'll be to be seen probably over the next week or two.
Yep.
And then when it comes to a head coach, for those who are wondering, will that happen fast? It really, what's fast to you? The reality is the people that they're targeting to speak to in person to be the head coach is not Bill Belichick, is clearly not Mike Vrabel, and is probably not Jim Harbaugh. Probably. I'm going to say unlikely, but probably not Jim Harbaugh. And I don't want to say no to that one entirely because I'm not entirely sure about that one. Mm-hmm. But I do think they're earmarking other people that happen to be in the playoffs that are going to start this weekend. So the hiring of a head coach is going to take a little bit of time.
Sure.
The 2 people, you know, we can go into a little bit that I think are, to me, top of the list, and this is just me speculating. Ben Johnston, offensive coordinator, Lions. Mike Macdonald, defensive coordinator, Ravens. In the case of Mike Macdonald, they can't have an in-person interview with him for a couple of weeks minimum because the Ravens have a 1 seed. And with Ben Johnston, we'll see what happens this weekend with the Lions.
Sure.
And if they win, then you're going to wait another week there. And if they lose, then I think that'll get expedited. I also think in both of those cases, those are 2 people that a lot of teams are going to want to talk to, and there are a good amount of openings out there. So unlike Peters, if they want their guy, I don't think it's as a slam dunk as this particular one was.
Sure.
When they said rapid and thorough, I knew exactly what they meant. And I told you on Monday, so this is going to happen fast within a week. And it happened even a little quicker than I thought. Once it got narrowed down to 2 people, it was down to, and this is what I couldn't answer yesterday when I was talking about it. I said, I don't know that he definitively wants the job. That's the part I don't know. And that's why Ian Cunningham is sitting there. If he says no, they're going to turn to Ian Cunningham and offer him the job. But because he said yes, he's the guy that they wanted. And considering his background, who he's been with, how often he's won, Patriots, Broncos, 49ers. He was there for the Broncos Super Bowl championship. He was there for the beginning stretches of the Patriots dynasty, albeit in a lower level.
Sure.
And
He's
now,
still a scout, though, under Bill. I mean,
correct.
That does say something.
Yes, and now basically as a number 2, you know, behind Lynch and company at San Francisco, amid, you know, what is the best roster in the NFC and the most consistent team in the NFC, and they've had their coaches poached constantly, and they've been able to be fine. Well, look at what's happening with the Eagles right now. Like, they went and hired Sirianni. He gets these 2 coordinators. These 2 coordinators both get jobs, and the next year they crumble like a house of cards. Well, guess what? Roberts
air quotes 11 wins. I mean, it's
11 wins, but we don't know what's going on
here.
And there's a lot of reporting like it's on the table if they blow up against Tampa Bay this weekend. That might be on the table too. So who knows? What's going to happen in Philadelphia? They're very quick to change course if they don't feel like it's going right. So I thought like 11 wins and off NFC and in the playoffs again. How do you fire that head coach? But considering what's happened here, I think it's on the table suddenly now. I think they're smart. I don't think they'll go after somebody unless they think they're going to get them.
Right.
So I think that they would probably circle the wagons if they have to, but I don't think that's off the table at all here. So there might be more competition. We don't know.
There's one less team with the Patriots
today.
The
Patriots. I never thought that they were in line to go after the people we're looking at.
Sure.
Like, I felt like that was either going to be Gerard Mayo or Mike Vrabel. That made too much sense, and they did this very quickly and got Mayo done as their head coach. So they were kind of off the board to me the whole time. Seattle, I don't know, but feels like it's very earmarked for a very specific person, the Dallas defensive coordinator, because he has a lineage there, been very successful, highly sought after, and he knows that GM who's not leaving to Seattle. So, like, they're going to hire somebody they know, obviously. Like, I don't think they're going to be like, let's go do the search. I think they're just waiting out on Quinn, probably. And they're going to have to wait a little while for that unless the Cowboys are a surprise this weekend, which I don't expect. But you
never know.
Right.
Never
You never know. So we'll have to see with them. But that feels earmarked there. The other ones, Tennessee. Would Ben Johnson prefer to go to Tennessee over here? God, I have a hard time believing
Especially
that.
with what's come out now with,
correct.
with the power structure.
Yes.
There. Yeah.
Would he prefer to go to Carolina? Well, he might get more money.
He turned him down last year, though.
He wouldn't even talk to him last year. He wouldn't talk to anybody, really. But still.
When you and I knew Tepper was going to throw whatever he wanted.
Yes.
So
if you read the tea leaves, it doesn't feel like that would be the spot, albeit I do think his price point, he did the right thing, obviously. The price point's going up, and that's where this one's a little more complicated because I think there's going to be interest from multiple teams for him, and then it comes down to price point and fit. And I would hope that he sees this as the fit. We get to give him the quarterback he wants out of the draft.
That's right.
With maybe one notable exception, maybe. If you read some weird reporting that's going on today that I don't want to put a lot of credence into because it's not Schefter or Rappaport or someone like that, but there is reporting out there that Caleb Williams is asking for assurances he won't be drafted by the Bears. And I don't know if I believe it or not.
Yeah.
But he also has not committed to going into the draft yet. And the only reason I could see why he would do that at this point, because why wouldn't he? He's going to be the number one pick to somebody. Why wouldn't he just say that? Well, maybe he is preemptively telling the Bears, you're going to trade out of this, probably to somewhere we want to go, which I don't know if he can pull that off, but it's happened in the past. Eli Manning did not go to the Chargers because the family and he did not want to go to the Chargers. John Elway, famously years ago, did not want to go to the Baltimore Colts and was traded, the rights to him, was traded to the Broncos. So this has happened before. So I don't know that it's completely off the wall, but like he's going to be I think he's going to be the number one pick. I'd be surprised if he isn't. And the fact that that's the case, you'd think he would have declared for the draft, and he hasn't yet. So
that tweet that you're referencing isn't real, by the way.
Again, that's why I don't want to.
It looks like somebody was real, but it's not.
But I do want to say though, he has not committed to going to the draft yet, and so that it would be reasonable to think that there are background conversations going. What's going to happen? Because if I'm definitively giving you the number one pick, then he probably does want to talk to the team with the number one pick now to hear what their plans are. And it is his right and his life to determine whether he wants to play for that franchise or not. So, that could be happening. But again, I don't want to sit there and go, that's clear. Like if Schefter tweets it, it'll be true. If Rappaport tweets it, it'll be true. If it's these other people, I don't know that to be the case, and I don't think that's fair to him to claim that that's the case. But he has not declared for the draft. He only has 2 days left to do it.
Yep.
And that is weird when you're the number one pick to not automatically go, oh, by the way, I'm going to the draft, even though I think in the end he will.
Right.
As for Adam Peters, I mean, just my general reaction is like this is a home run for them. This is it's a good sign that they've earmarked the guy they want. It'll time will tell if he's the right person here, obviously. But the fact that they can get that done in an expedient manner when there are other opportunities out there for him tells you that this ownership group here is very serious about the people that they like, and they are able to close a deal. And they convinced him to leave a place that, he didn't even take other interviews from other places.
Right. It's also, I just want to give Ben Standing some credit here. He also had a statement on him. Agents voted Peters among the league's talent evaluators and front office leaders they trust the most. Rare mentions for a non-GM because he hasn't been a full GM. He's been assistant GM.
That's an important thing to point out, but go on.
And he tied for first in the future GM to watch category, also voted among agents. So that also, say what you want. They hired... You and I have had this discussion before where Dan, maybe not in the front office, but when it comes to coaches and players, would always bring in the best guy available usually, right? Like he never shied away from bringing in the Hall of Fame coach or the future Hall of Fame coach. Players would pay top dollar. If they said, go
get this player.
Right.
He did it with Wentz. I mean, like, I hated that revisionist, well, Dan made us do it. No, they didn't. You went to him.
Right.
He didn't go and demand you sign Carson Wentz. But once you said you wanted him, he said, go, 100% do it, and it's your fault that you wanted him.
And so what happened here is Ron got the full power, and we've gone through it all week for the last couple of weeks, but one of the things that came out, and from Ben, once again, specifically, where agents were calling the team and not knowing who to talk to because Ron was handling everything. Well, this goes a long way to just kind of wipe the slate clean and then refresh all of these relationships with the agents and everyone who actually not runs the league, but is a significant part of the league, that you got to do some of the PR work and be someone they want to talk to, and that they'll call you when they need to do some of this stuff. I mean, it's even more of a refresh than people think, I think, with this.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like the reality is, like, and Rivera all but admitted this by the end, that part of the job was too much.
Right. Correct. Yes.
And, you know, when I'm the voice of the team and I don't know exactly what Martin Mayhew's role is,
Yep, right.
I know what his title is, but I don't know what his role is, that ought to tell you everything that you need to know. And if I don't know what's going on, then the agents don't know what's going on. And there's been plenty of examples, and they seem really small, but they're very eye-opening. When you don't get a deal done with J.D. McKissick and then get him to change his mind only after the fact, it makes you wonder why preemptively you didn't do that.
Yeah.
What front office allows that to happen? Or in this particular case, like I've talked about this a lot, how is Rivera telling Josh Harris and his group that they've got everything running on all cylinders when half the team isn't under contract?
Yeah, right.
Like, let's just say it went well this year and you went 9-8 and we're playing this weekend on the road somewhere. Well, even if it went well, how are you explaining what the team looks like next year? It doesn't look like you had any forethought to what 2024 would look like as a roster. So they mismanaged, you know, that part of it, and that's Ron's fault. He was the head of the organization. He did not have a structure in place that seemed, you know, amenable to agents to understand how you work with this particular group. You know, I'm sure, you know, the truth-telling will come out from all of them through the years of how they felt about this or how they felt about that. In the case of the prominent free agents this year, I do think Ron's hands were tied. I think if it was up to him, they probably would have re-signed Cam Curl, and they might have re-signed Montez, maybe. You know, maybe, but like in both of those cases, not Chase, but in those cases, this is the year where unfortunately their hands were tied to commit real money because they didn't have the authority to do it. And so this is the one I'll give them a break on some of that stuff. But the previous 3 years, no.
Yeah.
And Dan proved with Carson Wentz, while he may be more absentee than he's been, when you do go to him and say, I need to do this, he said, do it. So it's not like it wasn't available to be done. We don't know what Marty Herney's job really was.
Right.
Was he the head of the personnel? It sounds like it, in coordination with Ron, but you wouldn't know it publicly because it's never disclosed.
They wheeled him out there for press conferences, but we never
Martin
really...
Mayhew, not Marty.
Oh,
Marty
right.
never
Sorry,
did
you're right.
him.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Marty
Yeah,
never did
Yeah,
him.
that's right.
So he's kind of the in the shadows, you know, string puller, we think.
We have no idea, though.
You know, is Ron really is Ron the final say? I think so, but you never really know.
Ashburn Clue. Who's the GM in the office with the talent evaluation?
You know, they used to always say this about Martin. They're like, you know, he's GM in title, but he's really more an administrator and doesn't have the power to say yes or no to really anything. And, you know, only he and Ron can answer how true that was. But it seems to ring true right now that Martin Mayhew was a GM in title alone.
Right.
And now, I would like to think, until we see it happen, this guy's going to walk in here and say, I do this. The people below me do this. This is who the agents call. This is how we're going to work on our team. This is who's in charge of scouting. And we're going to have a structure again. And, you know, everybody on earth says they got the best candidate to do it right now. Right. There was interest in him around the league. He chose not to talk to them. Yep. This also goes back to, and I'll reiterate, like, I appreciate this happened as fast as that it did. They clearly have eyed him for a while. Mm-hmm. And knowing that Ron was never going to retain that side of his responsibilities, that what his audition for this year was to prove he should remain the head coach of the team, but not to run the personnel side. And in the end, whoever they chose to do that was, in all likelihood, if you just know the league, was probably going to pick their own head coach anyway. But if they went 11-6, it would be at least an argument that Ron could say, I relinquish personnel control, but look at what we're doing on the field. Let me keep doing what we're doing. Yeah. That obviously didn't happen. So he ran out of his cell to even keep that remaining part of his job. It was always unlikely he was going to retain it anyway. But the point is, because we knew, or at least I knew internally, that they were never going to retain him as the personnel chief and that they were going to bring in a true GM for the football side, that process to find that person started a long time ago.
Right.
They may have started the process of looking at head coaches, but clearly this happened fast, partially because they knew who they wanted. They knew who they targeted. That's been going on for weeks. And respectfully for Ron, they didn't do anything sooner. The only thing they did was bring in an analytics chief who was never going to run the organization, but is going to be part of this front office structure, and a big part of it, because that is a big part of the NFL now. You need somebody running that side of it. So they have that person in place. Now they're calling him general manager now. We'll see what his end title is. I've been told there will be nobody above him in terms of football operation. So everything will stem down from him. Clearly, he's going to hire other people. We'll see with Martin Mayhew and Marty Herney if they remain. I don't know. Remember, Martin Mayhew came from San Francisco, so he knows Adam Peters.
Yep.
So maybe, I don't know. Like maybe. Eric Stokes, I don't know. He's been basically the director of player personnel, whatever that exactly meant all along. Maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't want to project out these people's jobs because I don't know. It'd be an easy guess to say that probably a lot of changes are going to be made, but there might be carryovers, and that may happen, and we'll probably find out over the next week. And I'm sure they've already talked about it. These are the people I want to hire for these specific roles, and considering they hired him and empowered him, they're going to do that on his behalf, and then we'll get to coach. And the reason why they're not screaming and running to get a coach is because the people they want are coaching this weekend.
Right.
Or coaching next weekend
sure.
in the case.
Right.
So they're going to take their time. Well, take their time is the wrong way to put it, but I'll say what I said yesterday. Now that this has happened, which I expected to happen, I do expect Ben Johnson to be the target as the head coach. The problem with him is there's going to be interest in him from other teams, and then we're going to find out what his priorities are, what his fit is, how much money they are willing to spend on a first-time head coach, and then we'll see how it goes. Everything reads like this is going to look very attractive to him. They just got this guy that all the agents believe is like an expert talent evaluator, a reasonable person, and someone who's going to be honest with you. They have a different structure, a different ownership group. And oh, by the way, do you like Drake May? Because we can pick him with the number 2 pick. Yep. He's your quarterback, and we don't have to give up anything to do it.
Right.
So let's go. And so I anticipate that they're going to make a hardcore push to get him whenever he's available to speak with. And if you want it to happen fast, then you're rooting for the Rams.
Right.
And if they
you and I will get into that later.
Yeah, and if they beat the Rams, then they play next week, and we'll have to wait a little bit of time. But I don't think they're going to – if I'm them, I'm not going to do anything till I talk to both he and McDonald for sure. Maybe Raheem Morris too. He's high up on my list. I think they'd like to talk to Dan Quinn. I don't think he's coming here as the head coach. It would be their top choice, and I do think I know where he's going.
Yeah,
so
right,
we all kind of know what that situation is. And then the others on the list – yeah, why wouldn't you bring them in and talk to them? But I do think that that Johnson or McDonald are going to be the 1-2 choice, and most likely Johnson because they have the number 2 pick now. And why wouldn't that person want to handpick his golden child quarterback right out of college and start fresh with that person? It just makes too much sense. So as long as they meet whatever his demands are contractually and probably what staff he wants to bring in, but you're not going to hire a coach and tell him he can't have his coordinator.
Sure.
So assuming all of that, is what we're looking at, then that's what I expect to happen. But it'll take some time until the Lions are eliminated before you can have the real conversation about it.
Yeah, and on top of all of this as well, like we mentioned Tepper, you look at some of the other situations around the league, it's not going to be as good as this one. In terms of a first-year head coach, you really do want everything kind of lined up. And you look at all the other positions, and it's like we just mentioned, Tennessee, we don't know what's going on with their front office and their ownership group. It's a little wonky. Yeah. They don't have a quarterback. They actually don't have a lot of skill position players. Does he want to go there? I don't think so.
I doubt it.
Does he want to go?
Is he going to go to Tepper?
Right.
That's a real...
I think you have to just eliminate Tepper for him.
Well, maybe. I mean, but if he goes, I'll give you $30 million a year.
Right.
Well, then that's where we get into can you turn that down?
Right.
And what if he does like Bryce Young? Because I don't know. So that one's the weird one. Atlanta, are they interested in him? I don't know. I feel like they're going to go after an established coach because I think it just feels like that's the right thing for them to try to do. Seattle feels like it's earmarked for a very specific person. They're not changing their front office, so that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
Patriots are off the board now. Raiders and Chargers, I think, are staring down Harbaugh, and I think one of them is going to get him, and one of them isn't. And then, does a surprise team show up who gets eliminated from the playoffs? Yeah, that's always a possibility. Philadelphia. I think if Dallas did something, I think it would be to make a play for Belichick, frankly. That's what I think would happen there, but you don't know.
Right.
Are they really, considering where they are they going to walk from McCarthy and lose Quinn? That doesn't actually feel probable to me. But would they, if they blow up in the playoffs and know they're losing Quinn, go get Belichick? At Jerry's age and how he publicly pronounces he wants to win, that actually makes sense to me. And considering He's hired winners, previous winners. He's hired Parcells. He's hired McCarthy. It makes sense to me. Now, if they go on a big long run, maybe nothing changes and McCarthy just comes back.
Right.
Exactly. Why? How do you? If they end up in the Super Bowl, win or lose, how do you fire the head coach off of that?
Yeah,
I don't know how in the world you would do that.
Yeah.
So I think you would stick with it, especially because of the way Dak played this year. I don't know why you would move away from McCarthy. But if they somehow lose to Green Bay, I think everything's on the table for them after this weekend.
Yeah, of course.
Overall, though, I'm very pleased. They wanted this guy. He comes with a massive reputation. Around the league, it's being welcomed as a humongous get for Washington. And all I can go with is this is way better than what we've had for a long time. And it's the first big move that the ownership group has made, and it feels like a home run.
Yeah,
all right, John Keim's going to join us next. Brave Watch the Show. He's been 6:30 at Sports Capital. Moose Johnston is going to join us at 4 o'clock. He's the new head of football operations at the United Football League. We're going to ask him a lot about the playoffs and obviously what Washington did today. So John Keim, who does his weekly visit here typically at 4, is kind enough to move up to 3:25. John Keim, of course, of ESPN. John Keim report on a day where we have some major news and a major structural change has occurred with the Commanders. So, John, just first off, your general reaction to the hiring of Adam Peters as what I think his title will be general manager, but head of the football operation is what?
Right. Yeah, he'll be the lead football executive. So the reaction was, this is absolutely huge for the organization. I think it signals so many things, Bram. And when I've talked to people in the league, first of all, Ian Cunningham was a respected candidate. And I think that needs to be said because I felt like they had two good choices. But I also think that when you talk to people in the league, one really stood out, and it was Adam Peters. And I think the reason why this is huge is it signals a couple of things. One, Adam Peters wasn't leaving for just any job. He could have stayed in San Francisco and ascended when John Lynch, if and when he ever decided to get out. And he would have been the guy to take over. So if he really wants to, and he's from that area. So for him to be lured out of there would take a lot. And he turned down interviews last year with Tennessee and Arizona. I know the Raiders and Chargers were interested in him this year. I didn't think this team would let him get to any other interviews. So I just think it signals a seismic shift on many levels. One, you get the most coveted GM candidate on the market. And not only did you get him, he wanted you. He wasn't just looking for any job. He wanted this one.
As for Ian Cunningham, did you think or do you think there's any possibility they can get him to join the organization as well?
I don't know how, because he'd be going to the same role. It would be a lateral move. I mean, he's the number 2 in Chicago, so he would be the number 2 here. So I don't see any way that happens. Okay.
Let's talk about process here a little bit. I've talked about this a lot on the show. I've talked obviously with you a lot about it. So this past year, what Ron Rivera was auditioning for was to somehow remain the head coach of the team. He was never really going to control the personnel department beyond this season. And It was unlikely that he would keep his job because that person is probably, whoever gets hired in that role would probably hire their head coach. Had the record been different and had the team looked different on the field, maybe there would have been a case. Obviously, that didn't happen. How long do you think that this ownership group, how long have they been looking into finding the right person to run the football side and why Peters was the right person for them?
Well, first of all, I think it's been a while because their favored setup in everything else they do with the sports teams is having a football, an executive, whether it's whatever the title is, a lead executive and then a coach, right? And so that was always going to be the setup. So from the beginning, I do believe they've been researching that. And I know that the talk with Bob Myers, in hindsight, they've been in contact with him for a little while, probably a couple of months. So clearly they were looking for ways, how do you set things up? Bob Myers knows Adam Peters pretty well. That connection clearly mattered. So I think it's been a while since they did. As far as from their end, they haven't been talking about this. But what I do know from talking to people about Peters, I know that first of all, they wanted somebody who was going to be, at least had a high degree of analytics usage. And I think that he does. But I think more than that, it's about being able to set up. And I'm kind of tired of the word culture because it was overused for a lot of years. But I do think it's like there's a culture of winning, right? And not just a, hey, let's all get along, but it's a culture of winning. And how do you set up a front office that can do that? And the collaborative effort that it takes. I think those are things that appeal to anyone about him. He had a major role in building the 49ers. Listen, he worked his way up from a scout. This is not someone who, he was a scout for 11 years. That's a hard road. And he developed a really good reputation as a talent evaluator. So all those things were going to appeal to anybody who needed a job. But I think, like I said, in San Francisco, they had John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, obviously, but you had to, you see firsthand how a successful organization is built and what it takes. And again, collaborative effort is a big deal for them and for him. And, so I think that was a big part of it.
Okay. This is never the best question to ask, but they do have current staff members in the front office that are carryovers currently. What's your expectation there? Do you think that he builds his own staff from scratch? Do you think that there are potential carryovers here? What do you see?
Yeah, initially we all thought that Martin Mayhew would be out as general manager. However, because there was a chance that you could have a couple different titles, right? However, Adam Peters did work with Martin Mayhew for 4 years in San Francisco. And, you talked about there, it sounds like Mayhew was liked and respected out there. Clearly, he's not staying in the general manager role because Adam Peters has that title. But I could see him being reassigned. I don't know, though, when somebody comes in like this, you're going to bring your own people. You're not just going to say, hey, I'm the only one coming here. You're going to bring your own people. And it's just a matter of how many are you bringing and how many do you need to keep and who might be holdovers. But, I could see Mayhew clearly he would have to be reassigned, and then it's a matter of can you accept that role or not. And he was a senior VP of player personnel when he was out in San Francisco. So would he do something like that here? I don't know. I think it's very, very early for that, but that's how he would stay. And could I see it? Yeah, several days ago, I still would have put it as I doubt it, but you never know. Now I would say, hey, I don't know. And I don't know what the thinking is. And yes, there's a chance he can stay in a different role. The question, though, is, because I know in talking to people there over the last however many months, they all kind of expected to go. But this familiarity that Peters has with Mayhew may give some of them the ability to stick around. Okay.
The next step will be after he fills out his staff is obviously finding the coach. Let me go through just a few of the names and just see where you've landed on them. I don't know if it is a total surprise that Mike Vrabel is out in Tennessee. And then once he was, then people thought for a second maybe he's succeeding Bill Belichick, but that obviously is not happening now. So he's available, and he's one of those you don't have to wait out the playoffs for. Do you think there's any interest in Washington in Mike Vrabel?
I haven't heard that, and I also don't know. The hard part when you get to coaches at certain levels is the kind of power that they might want and the say they may want, and it may not, it just might not mesh. Somebody else brought up to me, oh, what if Mike Tomlin gets fired? Tomlin is a no-brainer for any team with an opening. However, would he go somewhere where it's well, what's the power structure? I think this is true for any coach. What say would the coach have in the 53-man roster? Who has the final say? And would a coach of someone like Vrabel of his experience, or how much would they want? Would they be okay in this sort of a setup? And I don't know, but I have not heard his name yet in connection with this.
Okay,
and that's I don't know that he will be, but I just haven't heard it yet.
I have not heard Jim Harbaugh linked here, but I do give it a small percentage. So no, you think it's a no on Harbaugh?
Oh no, I haven't. I'm sorry, I haven't heard his name either. I don't think, and I would be surprised. I don't think it'd be a good fit for either side. Keep in mind, there would have been people out in San Francisco who would have worked with Harbaugh when Peters got out there. He was out there in 2017. Harbaugh was a couple years gone, but there'd still be the remnants of that. So people know that he's a difficult guy to work with, especially after a few years. So, and I think from Harbaugh's standpoint, would you really want to go somewhere where maybe it's going to take a few years to build back up to with a level you want it to be at? So I just don't think it'd be but I have not heard his name, and every time I've asked, it's never been anything above well, you never know.
Okay. And then I'll just say this publicly. We've said this for weeks, and I know this to be the case, but I have to say it publicly. I do not believe Bill Belichick's going to be the head coach here. So, and I know you've heard the same thing. So we just.
Well, I reported that yesterday that there's no interest in bringing him here. And again, I would go back to the same thing I just said. If you're Belichick, are you really going to go somewhere where you're not going to have final say on everything? No. So but it was never. That was the easiest story to shoot down time and time and time again. It's not something it was an option here. It was not going to happen. And I mean, you and I have talked about this. It's not like I'm saying something that others didn't know. So, but I did put it out there yesterday because it started to become too prevalent that people kept saying it's not happening. Multiple conversations with people over a month or month and a half. They've said the same thing, and they say it very firmly and very quickly every single time.
Okay.
And I know you've heard the same stuff.
Yes, I know. It's been told to me that he's not, even when it was just
Me
rumors.
Too.
Yeah, even when it was just rumors in the middle of the season, and it was like, he's interested in Washington. I'm like, the Washington people aren't saying that. It's the Belichick people that are saying that.
Correct.
Or people just surmising because Washington's done things like that in the past, but this isn't the same ownership anymore. So that's why the whole time I'm like, it's not happening. All right. So in all likelihood, their next head coach is someone who's participating in the playoffs that starts this weekend.
Right.
I believe their number one target is Ben Johnson, personally. Do you believe that Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator with the Lions, is the target that they're trying to get to be the head coach?
I think he's probably everybody's. Well, maybe not everybody's because I don't know if Atlanta, but because depending on what the Belichick and Harbaugh stuff. But I think he'd be most teams' number one. And so, do I believe they want to get him? Yes. Do I believe it's a done deal? Hell no. I know that it's not remotely close because they haven't even talked to him yet. And not only have they not talked to him, he hasn't talked to them. This is not just hey, we're here now, let's go get you. I think if you're Ben Johnston, I'm going back to the Orioles pitching staff of a few years ago. If you're Ben Johnson, you want to know what kind of power will I have? Like, for example, what if Washington won't give them the final say over the 53-man roster, but another team will, and they're kind of comparable? What if Atlanta gives them that? So I think could something like that be a deciding factor? Possibly. I think there are a lot of people who are making that, again, surmising that it's Peters and Ben Johnson. Well, that would be the grand slam move of the offseason for Washington. But I would not assume that, but I do believe he would be, I can't say for sure he's a top target, but I do believe he certainly would be the most attractive based on his track record and what he's done and his background. He's the best candidate for them, I would say, but that doesn't mean they're going to get him. And there are other good candidates. And the other thing, Bram, too, you need to let the process play out. And if you're Washington, you can't. This team in the past has gone into these interviews like when they hired Jay Gruden. They wanted Jay Gruden, period. It didn't matter how other people did in those interviews. They wanted Gruden. I had multiple people tell me that other people in the interviews, they felt like they should have, like Jim Caldwell. Now, whether or not you like Jim Caldwell, but other people like, he had the best interviews. He was the best this. But they knew that Bruce Allen and Dan had already set up their minds they're going to hire Jay Gruden. So when you go in there, and I think anybody who worked there would have had a tough time. I think Jay did fine given what he had. There were flaws, whatever. The point is, like, they had their minds made up. You can't do that because, like, if Pittsburgh had done that, they don't hire Mike Tomlin. They may have hired someone else, and Russ Grimm was considered a favorite, but Mike Tomlin blew him away. You have to allow yourself to be blown away by somebody else, whether it's Mike McDonald or someone else. Bobby Slowick. What if Bobby Slowick is the guy? So I think there's that's a long answer, but I think while he would be a top candidate, I just don't think we can sit there and say like, oh, they're definitely going to get him or anything like that.
Okay, so since you mentioned Mike Macdonald, what's your I know they want to talk to him too. What's your sense of his candidacy? Because he would be, and this is, some people are wondering, me too, actually, with the number 2 pick now, all of a sudden, don't you want to go with an offensive-minded coach? Because in all likelihood, you're picking a quarterback at number 2, and don't you want an offensive-minded head coach?
I'm with you on that. However, when I talk to people too who have been in the position to hire people and all that, they're not going to say, well, automatically you got to go offense, whatever. It's find the best leader. Find the guy who in that room is going to be best lead this team. The problem is, I'm with you. Like, if to me, I would want to get an offensive-minded head coach because, Mike Macdonald, I hear a lot of good things about him, especially as a coordinator. He's very adaptable. I think his defenses have been terrific. I mean, Baltimore can change personnel, but with this guy, they always are become a good defense. And why is that? Well, it's the system, it's the way he adapts, the way he uses players and finds ways to use them. It's very, very impressive. So you don't want to miss out on a guy by that. But the trick for the D coordinators, of course, is, look at Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn is a candidate here. When Dan Quinn was in Atlanta and he had Kyle Shanahan as an OC, they went to the Super Bowl and should have won it. And then it's like slowly Kyle leaves, and then they slowly kept going downhill because with each subsequent hire, it was difficult. And if you have if you bring in a defensive-minded head coach and you have, let's say you draft Drake May or Caleb Williams, one of those two, and they have some success within the first 2 years, you're losing that coordinator, period. Like Bobby Slowick in Houston might be there 1 year with C.J. Stroud, and then he might be gone, and at most probably 2 years. So then you're starting that over again, and now are you putting the quarterback in the same system? So I'm with you. Like, if all things being equal, you absolutely want the offensive head coach so that guy can stay in the same system and build that way.
I will say this, and it's hard to project because I think Ben Johnson's going to have a lot of demand, and that's the hard part here. That's the hard part here. But the good sign was, and albeit it was different, this team was looking for their GM early in the process and maybe their head coach, but I think they eyed who they wanted and they circled in on him very fast and got it done. But I do want to give them credit. They did get it done. So it is a good sign that they are going to be able to circle whoever that number 1 candidate is and potentially get that deal done.
I'm with you. And see, I think it was right before when the season finale was last. The season finale was last week. It feels like a year ago. And so before that finale, I wrote a story on Josh Harris for ESPN.com and just on how he comes to decision making and making his decisions. And part of it was, like, when he pursued Darryl Morey in the NBA, he was aggressive and fast at moving on it. And Morey had told me he was going to take a year off. It was a hiatus year for him. Told his wife that. Even after initially meeting Josh Harris, Harris flew him up to the Hamptons within a couple of days of him resigning from Houston. He said, even after me, it was like he still told us, I still think I'm going to take a year off. They got Morey. Doc Rivers gets fired. They wanted Doc Rivers. Within 3 days, he's the head coach in Philly. So when he wants that guy, and he moves fast, and there was times in free agency too with the New Jersey Devils. So that's been his MO. So I agree with you. Like, if they really want him, I think they'll get him. But then it depends on, does Ben Johnson, if Atlanta is calling him and he looks at that roster and says, all you need here is a quarterback and you can go, and I like this, this setup, whatever. But I think the other thing for Ben Johnson will have to weigh when you look at some of these other teams, is there a better, how is that ownership group compare to this one? And with Adam Peters, his reputation as a talent evaluator. How is that going to help me long term versus having control of this aspect? So there's a lot to consider. And I think, I think whoever comes here, you get the benefit of, you got the number 2 pick. You have an owner who is willing. We know from past experience how patient they're willing to be. That buys you a lot of time as a coach. You go to some of these other places, you might get it. Like Arthur Smith got 3 years in Atlanta. That's it. And they were a disaster when they took over. Chargers, you may only get a couple of years because you have a veteran quarterback who's supposed to be really good, right? So I think all those things have to be taken into consideration.
All right, last thing, and I just want your perspective, having covered football for a very long time for the Worldwide Leader specifically. I just wonder what your perspective is on hearing Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, Pete Carroll all out in a 24-hour period, just the state of the sport when legends are all leaving at the same time.
I don't even know that you can put it into words what that means. Like, if you grew up in this game and following this game and covering this game, especially like, Pete Carroll is obviously seismic, but the other two are seismic. I mean, you're talking about arguably the best college coach of all time and arguably the best. And I think Belichick is one of the greatest coaches because I think there are a couple of others you put up there, but clearly he's in the top three.
It's
right?
a small list. It's like George Halas, Vince Lombardi, Joe Gibbs, him, Bill Walsh.
Paul Brown.
Yeah, Paul Brown, Bill Walsh. I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
That's it. That's it. Right. So you're, and same with, whereas I think Pete Carroll is a Hall of Fame coach, I think the other guys were transformational coaches. And in Saban especially, he won national titles at 2 schools. That stuff doesn't happen. And what he built at Alabama was incredible. And I don't know that we're going to see that again from anybody because it's just too hard. So, and especially with the NIL era, but it's going to be weird to imagine college football without him and the NFL. Well, we don't know. Like, Belichick's not done.
No, he's going to coach.
Is.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it's, I guess the era ending in New England is massive. But Saban retiring, man, that's just, it's hard to put into words. The other part too, like, he's probably going to be a part of ESPN Game Day, I hope. And like, he's a guy who, there's some coaches, Belichick's this way too. When they get going down a topic, it's interesting as hell what they have to say. Like Belichick's answers, if you ask him about, like, what do you have to do to win this game, he's like, score more points. But if you ask him about the evolution of the nickel cornerback position, he can go into depth and details, and it's fascinating. And I think Saban is the same way. Like, and here's the other part, Bram, with those two, as somebody who grew up in Cleveland, and that they're on the same staff, and you look at those staffs, and like, how did you not win? And Art Modell, you blew it. But man, that's the hard part. But it's unbelievable what all three of those guys accomplished. But especially those two.
Oh, I mean, in recent years, whenever they show that graphic of McVay, KOC, McDaniel, LaFleur, we're all here under Shanahan, Kyle, they're all here. I go, Cleveland, hold my beer. They had Saban and Belichick on the same staff. Come on.
They had Kirk Ferentz was on that staff. I mean, like, there are more on that staff that were just like, it's a different level because of those guys. And it's, yeah. It'd be like LeBron and Jordan being on the same team in high school and not winning. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's unbelievable.
All right, John. As usual, thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Brad.
All right, it's John Keim from ESPN, John Keim Report. We'll talk about Nick Saban's replacement, which has already happened next. Brad, watch the show, ESPN 630 at Sports Capital. All right, Alabama moved very quickly to replace Nick Saban, and they went after the guy who was in the national championship game at Washington overnight. Kalen DeBoer is going to be the next head coach at Alabama. Many reports have already confirmed that is happening. I don't think it was a surprise that Dan Lanning put out a video saying, I'm staying at Oregon. Steve Sarkisian put out a video saying, I'm staying at Texas. Dabo didn't put out a video that I didn't see, so maybe he was hoping.
Did you hear about his clause?
No.
This is what did it. Granted, I guess someone could have paid him if Alabama could have paid it. But if he were to leave Clemson, would have had to, and go to Alabama, he would have had to pay 150% of his buyout fee.
Oh.
So that was a clause they must have thrown in knowing, like,
if you're going we're not
there,
play this game,
if you're going there specifically, you're going to pay for it. And I'm going to guess that's probably what was tossed out.
Yesterday, when it was just out there that Saban left, the reaction from Feinbaum land was amazing.
Did you get the one I sent you on Twitter?
Well, they're just amazing. Yeah. There was one guy who wrote, if you hire Dabo, like at Greg Byrne, AD, if you hire Dabo, I will come to your office and kill myself. There's someone someone else who wrote, this is Twitter, not to be dramatic, but if it turned out to be Lincoln Riley or Dabo Swinney, I will rip off my own arm and stab myself in the face with a compound fracture. So they're rational.
Yeah, glad to see SEC land is just chugging along as normal.
If you pick Dabo Swinney, multiple national championship coach Dabo Swinney to replace multiple national no, we can't have that.
Can't do that.
Yeah, so if you take the straw poll, this is worse than what happened when Dan floated Jim Fossil to be the head coach of the Redskins, when everybody went, no, you won't, actually. And then they changed their mind and didn't hire Jim Fossil. So I guess they got the word. And listen, I mean, Washington turned into a power overnight with him. Took a couple of years. He clearly knows how to recruit people and bring them there. His quarterback's going to go pretty high. Granted, he went around a bunch of different places, but he had a great year with them. Their receiver is going to be a top 10 pick now. He just decided he's going pro, and I feel bad for the people at Washington. Hope you enjoyed it because you ain't replicating that for a while.
That was
because they're going to the Big Ten now. So good luck with that, guys.
As John just said, it feels like a year ago at the end of our season was last Sunday. They've just had a terrible 5 days. They lose the national championship, and their head coach and their whole entire offense went into the transfer portal. Like they're finished.
I think Barstool just put out a tweet saying this is Kayla DeBoer, and it was the clip of Jennifer Lawrence at the Oscars where they show her up, and she goes, "If I don't win, I'm leaving."
Yeah.
So I guess that's what it is. All right. We'll be right back. Moose Johnston is going to join us top of the hour. He's the new head of football operations at the United Football League, and we'll obviously ask him about what the Commanders have done, what the future is, and get a preview of the playoffs as well. Bram Weinstein Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, we're waiting to connect with Darryl Moose Johnston, who is the new head of football operations with the now merged United Football League, which was the merging of the USFL and the XFL. DC made the cut. They are part of that merge, so the Defenders stay. I'm sure we'll talk to Reggie Barlow at some point in time. And as soon as we connect with Moose, we'll have him on here to talk about that. And obviously, he calls games for Fox and is intimately involved with the NFL. Still called some of our games this year. So we'll ask him about the playoffs, which start this weekend.
It was always funny, by the way, on the subject of the XFL and us getting our team. It was always really apparent when they announced that merger, and then the XFL or the Defenders were still sending out their season ticket holder promotional emails.
Or when they had Reggie Barlow on with someone from the league. Yeah. I'll never forget that interview. And Reggie couldn't answer the question about what was coming, and then the person on the other line was like, "I'll answer that," and then didn't.
Yes,
because they couldn't do it.
You're right.
Those are my favorite interviews too. When you have to let on somebody to give me PR speak where I'm not going to answer the question, but now we know. But they were putting him out there because they were always going to survive.
Right.
So that's the good news.
It was very nice that it was like, even through all this, DC, we love you. You're going to be fine.
You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Just hang in there. You'll see.
Beer snake's not going away, guys.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, beer snake's there. We like the beer snake. We're going to continue with that.
Right.
Before we get to Moose, one quick thing. I'll get into a full playoff preview in about 20 minutes after we talk to Moose, but I do want to bring this one up. A.J. Brown apparently has scrubbed every mention of the Eagles on his Instagram, and we now know what that means.
Oh, man.
This
week of a playoff game.
This is going to be his last game in Philadelphia.
It's got to be.
And because they're probably going to lose, he didn't practice today. He's been injured, and he's also clearly not happy there. And Jalen Hurts, I guess, is practicing, and knowing him, he'll play because he's played through everything this year. I think an underrated story of the Eagles season is Hurts has played hurt the entire year. He's not been the same guy. But A.J. Brown is not pleased, and I'm sure at some point will tell us why he wasn't pleased. But the demise of the Eagles is starting to circle around him, his attitude, and whatever issues that he's had. And I felt this way forever. If your best player, and he is, doesn't like what's going on, you're in trouble. For whatever reason, you're in trouble, and you're not going to be able to fix it. You can't overcome your literal best player not only not performing very well, but clearly not liking the whole what's happening here.
Not only that, it's like they were winning. They were also forcing him the ball.
They were 10-1.
Right. And
you remember the game where they were up big? Yeah, it was a night game, and he was complaining. They were up big. Yeah,
it was against the Bucs who they're about to play.
They were killing him.
Yeah,
he was complaining, and then they force-fed him to shut him up.
Right, and it was like, everything's going well, man. I don't know why you're freaking out. I also think there might be a little justification here. The Tennessee front office traded him, and Vrabel bitched about it pretty loudly about
because he's talent, because
Right.
he is clear like top 5 receiver talent, and you don't just replace guys like that.
Of
You
course.
have to figure out a way to make it work,
Of
even
course.
if they are ornery people, which
Right.
this is the second team now, so it's a pattern
Yeah.
that it doesn't last long before he gets upset. And it's weird in this case because they're really good. That's the weird part of the whole thing.
Exactly.
They were in the Super Bowl last year. They were 10-1.
Right, exactly.
What's the problem?
I don't understand.
He wanted to date Taylor Swift.
This whole team, I think they're letting the city get to them. They're letting the winning get to them
It's
a little
weird.
bit. Like, I don't really understand what's going on.
Nobody understands what's going on. So the Eagles will play the Buccaneers. We'll see if A.J. Brown actually plays. Hurts is hurt. They've lost their last 2 games to the Cardinals and the Giants. So we'll just have to see what happens as we welcome in the new head of football operations of the United Football League, the Cowboys great and Fox Sports analyst, Darryl Moose Johnston, here to the show. Hey, Moose, how are you? Thanks for coming on today.
I'm good, Bram. How you doing?
I'm great. I'll ask you about the playoffs in a minute, but I do want to ask you about your role here with the United Football League to start with. Tell me about the merger, what the future looks like, and what your role is with the league.
I think the future looks great now because of the merger. I think that, over the last, few decades, we've seen a number of opportunities to create a successful spring league, and there's been groups that have done a really nice job. And usually from a financial standpoint, just how much it takes, how much money, time, effort, lift up and prop up a brand new football league and get it running is a lot more daunting than people understand. So there's been opportunities for this to go and be successful, and we've seen flashes. But I really think that this merger now with the USFL and the XFL coming together with great support from each side, some strengths that we're sorting through on each side and blending and having the cultures come together. But the most important thing has been the people. I think that's the one really important part in this merger. And one of the things that Russ Brandon and I really focused on the most was, we have an opportunity. We're going to have attrition, but how do we maintain and keep as many of the really, really good people that are working in all the different elements of professional football and keep them a part of this merger going forward. So that was really kind of our charge to start this whole process. And it's been very, very challenging at times.
What do you mean by attrition? Like losing coaches to the NFL, players to the NFL, is that what you're talking about?
No. With the merger, we're not going from
the teams
8 and 8 and going to 16. Yeah, we're reducing. So, we've got a number of players and a number of coaches, a number of support staff that wouldn't be a part of the merger moving forward. So how do we maximize that and get those people back and minimize the impact of that negative component of the reduction of the league across the board, across the entire football landscape. And that was going to be our biggest challenge. And, with the players, we've been able to put a couple mechanisms in place to get the best players back into our league, to make our roster stronger. We opened up a coaching window for about 10 to 14 days leading up right towards the end of 2023, where we had an opportunity for our coaching staffs that had positions open, or even the opportunity to upgrade a position on their staff, to reach in and bring back some of our USFL or XFL coaches onto the staffs. And then as we get into now, the next step in the next process of filling out the support staffs, where are the really good people in athletic training, strength and performance, video, all the different elements, in that football environment, and making sure that those components in our support staff are as strong as they possibly can be. So it's been very difficult. It's been challenging. There's been a lot of, tough emotional phone calls to people that weren't going to move forward with us. But the one positive coming through that whole journey was we really feel like the league got stronger. As strong as both the USFL and the XF were independently, we feel that we were able to maximize that strength, bringing them together in creating this merger. And that's the most important part, because we need the sustainability. We need the ability for this to be something that exists 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. Let spring football become an important part of not only just the sports landscape, but especially that football landscape. Is this the NFL is now expanding onto Christmas Day. The week goes from Thursday to Monday. You know, this country loves the game of American football and can't get enough, and we want to be a part of that way of satisfying that desire to consume it in the spring.
Have you ever taken part in building the beer snake, and would you be open to it this spring here in D.C. with the Defenders?
I am already committing to doing my best to help the snake grow. I will be helping add to the links.
Sounds good. Obviously, as you know, we're very happy that they made the cut, if that's the way to put it, to be here. It's a vibrant market here, and the Defenders really took a foothold here this past year. Obviously, you know that. So they're really a welcome addition to our sporting landscape around here.
Yeah, I don't think you guys made the cut. I think you guys earned the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it's a much different perspective from our side. When you looked at, all the markets that were there, it was a very hard decision. And there were some that just made absolute sense. And D.C. was one of those. You've got your XFL Coach of the Year with Reggie Barlow there. You've got the best record in the league last year at 9-1. You've got the traditions that have already started in the fan base, which is great. We had that a little bit in Memphis. Memphis had some really cool things that the fans kind of did generically and organically on their own on game days. And Birmingham is got the Horsemen and the Giddy Up chant. It's one of the things that I've enjoyed is watching, the fans, not just enjoy but embrace what's happening in that spring football landscape and just all the really, really cool things that they've incorporated into game day. So it's going to be fun. It'd be an opportunity for spring football fans to kind of hit each of the different stadiums and see what game day is like in all the different markets.
Okay, let me lean on your NFL expertise here a little bit. Playoffs start tomorrow. Obviously, here in Washington, we're going through a lot of change. You called a couple of our games this year. Just give me your general sense of the future for the Washington franchise and how you see it with new ownership. Obviously, a new GM was hired today. A new coach is coming. What is your sense of what the future looks like for Washington?
I think it's mainly positive. The change in ownership. I'm a Ron Rivera fan. I really think he's one of the more quality people when you talk about the NFL and from his time as a player to a coach. He's always been a good friend to our broadcasting groups, and it's sad to see him not have success. But I think one of the things that I saw during this coaching cycle was when you see Ron Rivera and you see Arthur Smith, both are very, very good head coaches, have enjoyed all my time that I've spent with them, but neither one of them could get the quarterback situation figured out. And I think that just continues to show, you've got to get that quarterback and that head coach together and aligned as quickly as you possibly can. And I think that was, the downfall for both of them. I don't know if Sam Howell's the future moving forward for Washington. You can see flashes of it, but you don't have the consistency. I'm not saying he's like Nick Mullins, but that if he doesn't improve his game and start to get better at not having the critical play and making the critical mistake, then it's hard to trust him in key situations during the course of the game. And that's the type of quarterback that can slide into that backup quarterback role for the majority of his career. But I think it's still early for Sam. I think there's an opportunity for him to grow and learn from his playing time and be an effective quarterback. But that's going to be something for the new head coach to determine. And I think it's something that he needs to determine immediately. There's a lot of talk about this quarterback class this year. I don't get an opportunity to see, a lot of college football, but I really haven't seen that guy that really just wow,
Huh.
Yeah, there's not a Trevor Lawrence in my opinion. And, and again, I haven't seen a lot of, the times I've seen Caleb Williams, there's been some things there that I don't think that makes him an automatic number one overall pick in the draft. Michael Penix, there's some positives there, but to me, I think that it's really a fit at the top. There's not one that stands out over all of them. I think it's more of which one would fit better into your system, which is really the approach that you should take with every player. Sometimes that talent doesn't translate because it doesn't fit into your scheme or the way you play offense or defense.
What was just your general reaction to seeing the end of Bill Belichick being the head coach of the New England Patriots?
It was very strange for us. We had them against Kansas City late in the season, December 17th. And just to be having to address that during the course of the game, what is the future of the New England Patriots? Will it include Bill Belichick? I mean, it was so surreal to be having that conversation on air during that game. But I think that the one thing that's for sure in the NFL is that at some point everybody has to retire, everybody potentially gets fired and has to move on. It's the one constant in all sports. And so even somebody as great and as legendary and somebody who's achieved all the amazing things that Bill Belichick has done with the New England Patriots, even that has to come to an end. I think the surprising thing was how quickly it moved. It sounds as though there was a transition plan already in place. So I'm excited for the opportunity for Gerard Mayo to be the head coach there. But it's just in one season to say goodbye to Bill Belichick, to say goodbye to Nick Saban at the University of Alabama, to say goodbye to Pete Carroll in Seattle. I mean, this has been a strange end of the season for the NFL as we talk about transition away from some of the more notable coaches in not only the professional game but the collegiate game.
Yeah, it's been extraordinary. I assume you called an Eagles game at some point this year. They are the biggest surprise to me. You got to play on a team that was an incredible collection of talent. You guys won a ton. The Eagles seemed set up to have a sustained level of success with the roster that they have. And I don't know, maybe you do. I don't know what's going on there. I haven't seen a team this good crater like this at the end of a season. Like, what is just your general sense of what you think might be happening in Philadelphia?
Yeah, we had them at the end of the season twice. We had them on the Christmas Day and New Year's Eve Day games. So it was the Giants in Arizona. And, when you look at the matchup, you're like, boy, this could get away from, Arizona or New York quickly if they're not careful. And it looked like it was in both games. And that ability of Philadelphia last season, when they got ahead, to just put people away and just put it on cruise control was really fun to watch. I mean, I think that's such a tremendous skill by a team when you get ahead and you don't ever allow your opponent to get back in the game. You continue to separate, and that was a strong skill for Philadelphia last year. And I think it was one of the biggest things that was missing from them this year. Now they don't have the pass rush ability that they had last year. When you talk about some of the losses that they had up front, it was a monster season last year. I think it was the number 3 all time when you talk about sack totals in a season from last year. And you lose Jonathan Gannon, and Jonathan Gannon is somebody that really connected with his players. And when we got ready for Arizona, and he was coming back to go against Philadelphia, and you heard some of the comments from some of the players on the defensive side of the ball, you could really kind of see that connection that they had. I think what Shane Steichen accomplished in Indianapolis shows you how good he is as a play caller. It's not just the ability to design an offense. It's also, to be able to work with your general manager and your personnel department to get the right people in the right pieces in place there. But then you also have to have the ability to call the game on Sunday. And during our game, because exactly to your point, Bram, we were trying to put our finger on exactly what was happening in Philadelphia. Why are they on this run of games where they're not playing well? And one of the things that I talked about was, North Turner, not just a great offensive coordinator, but a phenomenal game day play caller. Very anticipatory, always seemed to be one step ahead of the defense. Our battles with Philadelphia and Jim Johnston were some of my favorites because it was two great coordinators going head to head. Nor was one of the, the great ones that could kind of keep pace with Jim and be ahead of his blitzes. So I just think when you look at it from an overall perspective into Philadelphia, you lose two great coordinators. You lose some key people on the defensive side of the ball. Your style of play can't be replicated from what you did last season. I really feel now, looking back on it, that 2022 was an opportunity, to catch lightning in a bottle and win that Super Bowl, and they let it slip through their fingers with a fumble and a punt return. I mean, it's literally 2 plays that turn that Super Bowl from Philadelphia winning to Kansas City winning.
Yeah.
And, that will be, for the Philly fan base, that's going to be that bitter pill for them to get by.
All right, last thing. I'll just real quick. You don't have to be expansive. Who do you think will be in the Super Bowl when the playoffs play out?
God, I think that this is one of the years that it's really hard, right? I think everybody's hoping for San Francisco, Baltimore round 2. I felt that those were the 2 best teams that I saw during the course of the year when they're at their best. Can they play at their best all the way through the playoffs? And then hopefully if they do, we get to see them both at their best in the Super Bowl. I think that's the one matchup that I think is very, very intriguing. I think just from an emotional standpoint, everybody wants to see Detroit get there. How about just think if we had Detroit, Cleveland in the Super Bowl, having two teams that have never won it, and there they go. They somehow got past San Francisco and Baltimore.
It's not fair if one of them has to lose that. So, there's part of me that goes, I don't know if that'd be legal. All right, Moose Johnston, thank you so much for coming on today, and look forward to seeing you down at Audi Field for a Defenders game this spring. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I will be adding to the beer snake.
All right, sounds good. That's Darryl Moose Johnston. Appreciate your time. All right, we'll take a quick break, and we'll get into a playoff preview next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, thanks to Darryl Moose Johnston for joining us. Top of the hour, if you missed John Keim and a review of today's decision by the Commanders to hire Adam Peters as the new general manager of the franchise, which will be the top football decision-making post. You'll hear our discussion about that. So really crazy day here. As we start the process of getting the new leadership in place for the Commanders and look ahead to 2024. In the meantime, the playoffs begin tomorrow in the NFL. And let's do it. Let's do it. No. Paul.
We're gonna pick the whole. It's not even Paul Day. Although it is a Paul. It is a Paul day.
This is an all-time Paul. These last 3 days have been all-time Paul days. I might
have to pull it up for our 45 segment of the caller that I but saw a video of on Twitter yesterday, and it was. It's like all-time good. It was so good.
To Paul?
Yeah.
Freaking out?
It was if Dabo was going to be the coach.
Oh, if Dabo.
And
then people acting as if Nick Saban died. Yeah. She didn't.
Yeah, right.
He just retired. He's in his 70s, guys. I mean, the day was coming.
Right. I made a joke because people were bringing boxes of Little Debbie's oatmeal cream pies to leave at his statue. And I was like, there's some drunk dude at 3 a.m. that is going to stumble into the jackpot of snacks.
Oh, yeah. He's like, oh, look at that.
Look at that. All just for me.
It'd be the one person who's like, what's this for?
Yeah, right.
Doesn't know.
Yes.
I want to know how many kids are transferring out of Alabama, and not just football players. I mean student population who goes, I came here for this. To get 4 years of, we're going to be really good at football.
I'm with you. If I'm going to Alabama, that's the reason.
That's the reason.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. That is the reason.
Most of those SEC schools, you are going to be a football fan, and I don't blame you in today's day and age.
Well, I've talked. I've got a daughter in high school now and a son who's who said to me years ago he wants to go to Michigan. I don't even know why. Then they just won a national championship. Now he's all in, wants to go there.
Oh, man.
But I've actually told them, and especially my son who's actually really into sports. I'm like, listen, I loved American University. I had a great experience there. I still teach there. Yeah. I'm a supporter of the basketball program. I love my alma mater. But there is this part of me that goes, if I could do it over again, just having that link to a big football program, it stays with you the rest of your life. It's important.
Yes.
And if you could go to a school like that where you are tied to something like that and, you have this pride every fall in your football program, there's nothing wrong with that. It is, you're paying a hefty price to go to a school.
Yeah, slightly. Yeah,
you're paying a hefty price to go to any school, but if you're going to that's a pretty good perk that goes along with it.
Correct.
That every time you go back there, they're part of you.
It's funny you say it that way because I went to Montgomery College. I got, I studied for radio. That is what I went to school for. But I obviously had a ton of friends at Maryland, and I went to Maryland football games and basketball games. But even I feel the same connection to those sports with those guys.
Yes.
And I didn't go there.
Same thing with Maryland for me. You always make fun of me. I'm like, I grew up going to Maryland basketball games.
So did I, but it just doesn't resonate.
I have a ton of family members and friends that went to Maryland. So I'm linked to it. I want them to be good. I feel like it's part of me.
But for me, it's like I didn't pay any money, so I like to criticize them a little bit. But it's the same thing. I went to their games, but I'm on the same level as the people that went there. Like, that shouldn't even be the case. So.
I saw somebody tweet, they're like, Alabama has interest in Mike Locksley. And I'm like, oh, sure they do.
Oh, no, dude, that was not just anybody. That was Desmond Howard.
Yeah.
He got roasted in the comments. Or it was
what?
He said no. He said something along the lines of, one name I haven't heard is Mike Locksley.
Yeah.
And the comments were like, stop it.
Really?
Like just stop it, dude. And it was like,
no offense.
You know what he did?
Are you kidding?
He did the same thing that I made fun of. He goes, he won 3 bowl games and he's done more with less. And I'm like, dude, stop.
if Locksley did what DeBoer did in Washington, he might get that job.
Yes, exactly.
He didn't.
Right, exactly.
He didn't.
Exactly.
All right, let's get into the playoffs, which begin tomorrow. First kickoff, 4:30 p.m., NBC, Browns and Texans. Joe Flacco, all-time savior off the couch, takes over as quarterback 4, then lights it up for the last month.
Yeah.
11-6 Cleveland, and they were 11-5 and didn't care to play in the last game because they were locked and couldn't win their division. Taking on Texans with probably offensive rookie of the, well, it's going to be him or Puka. I don't know. That's going to be interesting. Right. That's interesting now because Puka actually broke the record for receptions by a rookie.
Sure.
So it's going to be one of the two. It'll probably be Stroud because it typically goes to a quarterback. But either way, both of them are crazy stories, actually, considering how the season's played out. Texans, who came from nowhere, new coach, used number 2 overall pick. He has a 4,000-plus yard season and missed games. Remember that. And missed games, taking on Cleveland, who should have been dead in the water when Chubb and Deshaun got hurt and aren't, and streaked into the playoffs the whole way with a really, really good defense. This one's tough. Cleveland's a favorite here.
Yeah.
Give me Houston.
Oh.
Give me Houston. I would typically go with a more veteran team, which they are. But when I saw Denzel Ward got hurt, I went, uh-oh. They better get a lot of pressure on Stroud. That's a tough cover for them now. So I think that game is, can Cleveland hold them down enough? Because I don't see Cleveland lighting those guys up. I think this is a close game. The Ward injury is what got me, and that Houston's at home. I think Cleveland was a great story. Give me the Texans to win a very close game. I don't think either one of them win next week, but I'll take Houston here in this one.
I will go foil for you here. Browns win this game because I like their defense more of a veteran presence. Flacco.
100%. I said this in the preseason. I go, they have a real defense. Watch out.
Flacco also is going to be able to calm all of them down. Like that. Don't sleep on that veteran leadership that he's going to go, guys, we need to survive the first 5 minutes here. Everyone needs to, keep their composure. And I also read a stat earlier today that the Texans, they give up like the most yardage on play action plays, like in the league essentially. And so my argument here is, what's the one thing Flacco does amazingly? He does play action just as good as anyone else. They have a pretty good run game, even though Chubb got hurt. I think Cleveland wins comfortably here. Not a blowout, but I'm saying like a 23-13 type win. I think Cleveland wins this one. I think they're a little more talented.
I think they're a little more talented too. I did not like that Ward injury because I think the biggest weapon that they have is those receivers. And I think that's what's dangerous about them.
They still have Njoku, though, who it was amazing down the stretch.
Yeah, so. No, I there's a part of me that goes, I think I might be on the wrong side of this. I think either way it's close. I don't think this is a blowout either way. So I'll just take Houston at home to knock them off, and then they'll lose next week.
I'll take Cleveland.
One of the storylines is that Peacock has this Dolphins-Chiefs game, which
so stupid.
As an NFL employee, it's hard for me to go too hard at this. I don't love it. This isn't Amazon where 8 million people have it. And oh, by the way, if you are in your home market with Amazon, you get to see it anyway.
All right, okay.
In this case, this is rough. I mean, this might be the best game of the weekend, and I don't even have Peacock, so I'm actually pissed.
Yeah, so am I.
I'm pissed.
I don't.
This is a tough one to be like. I hate going at the league a little bit, but come on, guys. Like this is a playoff game. Like, come on. It's not time to roll that out. Had they done it on, say, Christmas Day.
Right.
And been like, we're going to do this special one here. And you got to get, I would have been mad, but not like this. I want to watch this. That's what I'm not happy about this.
What I don't really understand the NFL is, don't you guys realize the reason you guys are so popular is because all of your games are available locally on Fox, CBS, NBC, whatever. And all these other sports leagues like the NHL and the NBA, they're all on cable. And that is your number one advantage here, is that you are just accessible to everybody. And look at what the Suns are doing. They're going over the air because they realize now just being accessible is such a win here. And to not have Patrick Mahomes be on a widely available game, by the way, it's not like there's another game going on at the same time. Mistake.
I think it's a mistake, too.
I think you're going to learn how many people just decide not to do it or go out, too. Like, this is the other thing, too.
Go out and go watch it.
People are going to go to bars for this one because it's like, it's a Saturday night NFL. I bet you're going to have a lot of people not bother subscribing for this game.
I agree. As for the game itself, I assume Taylor will be there. She'll be in whatever her best winter gear is, because apparently it's going to be 0.
It's going to be like negative now. Like, it's gotten worse.
Second year in a row, the Dolphins have drawn a terrible weather environment. They got the Bills last year. Now, they almost won there.
I was going to say, they kept that one close.
They did. I don't love that both of their pass rushers are gone. Mm-hmm. I think that's a difference here. The Chiefs' offense obviously has been really weird and not really predictable. The Chiefs' defense is way better than it was a year ago. The Dolphins' offense hasn't been the same down the stretch for whatever reason. Tua doesn't run very much. This is about the interior offensive line of the Dolphins. If they don't handle Chris Jones, I think the Chiefs are going to limit them in points. And even if the Chiefs aren't as explosive as they were, they'll score enough to win. So I'm going to go with 24-21 Kansas City.
I'll go a little lower because it's literally going to be 0 degrees with temperatures going negative late at night. Like they're saying -1, -2 by the time that the game is over with. That tells me the Dolphins aren't going to score a lot. It tells me the Chiefs also aren't going to score a lot when it's that cold. I'll go lower scoring here. Give me like a 16-10, 16-13 type game. I think it's just going to be a slog.
It could be. Yeah, it could be very easily.
You know how this goes in these really cold weather games. Guys just can't move in the second half as well. So I'm going low scoring here. I think the Chiefs eke it out, though. I think the Dolphins put up a fight, but you can't pick against the Chiefs in Arrowhead for a playoff game.
And if there is a weakness of Miami's defense, who's covering Kelsey here?
Right. Yeah, good question.
I don't love whoever the receiver is on Jalen Ramsey. But who's covering Kelsey here? And he's a little overdue to have a big game.
Yeah,
so the Swifties will be happy.
And he rested last week, too. He was on, when he did New Heights this week, he was like, yeah, I could have gone out there, suited up for 16 yards and gotten the 1,000, because whatever the record is for having 1,000 yards. And he was like, didn't feel right. I want to rest my body up. And last time I played, I think, who did they play last week? They played was it the Rams? They played the Rams in L.A.?
No, the Rams played the Niners.
No, it was whoever they played.
Chiefs played the Chargers.
It was a divisional opponent.
13-12.
And he was like...
But they didn't play their guys.
Yeah, but he basically said, last game I had like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. They weren't going to let me get anything. There was the one thing they were going to worry about. So with him being rested, I think you're onto something. He's going to have a big game.
Steelers-Bills, 1 o'clock. There was rumors it was going to get moved to Cleveland because the weather there is terrible. Mason Rudolph's the quarterback again. I'll reiterate, I think actually he's their best option. I don't think that they're just doing this to do it. I think he's been their best option this year. They've just ended up there. Their offense doesn't score quickly enough or enough. TJ Watt is out. Pittsburgh, I appreciate how competitive they are. They're not good enough to win this game. And I don't see their offense, short of just disaster plays in the Bills secondary with Pickens or something, somehow scoring enough points to win. So I think the Bills win relatively easily. If they lose, I think Sean McDermott will get fired.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. You can't lose this game at home. Give me the Bills 23-10. I don't think the Steelers score very much.
Sounds about right to me.
Maybe they can control the clock. That's their best way here. Can Najee Harris have 150 yards rushing? If that's the case, the score is going to be low scoring, and they'll probably lose a close game. But otherwise, if this has any pace to it at all, the Steelers can't keep up. Yep. So I'll take 23-10 because it's also going to be ridiculous weather there.
I'll go 20-10. I'll tick it down just a tick because I think Tomlin will scheme something up. Plus, Josh Allen does Josh Allen stupid things, and I think Tomlin's going to try to hop on that. They just won't score, though. I'll go 20-10 on this one.
Packers at Cowboys. This is an all-time.
The mood is tense.
The mood's tense, and also it sets up like an all-time car wreck game. McCarthy potentially to lose to his old team, knowing his job would be on the line if he would somehow lose here.
By the way, the last time they played each other in Dallas was the Did Dez Catch It game too. So the vibes on that.
That was in Green Bay, though.
Was it in Green Bay?
It was.
In Green Bay?
Last
time they played each other in the playoffs was that game.
Well, they changed the rules about what a catch is after that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody knew what a catch was anymore. I think Dallas is a way better team. They have a bunch of 22 and 23-year-old receivers going against those corners. That's not good.
Yep.
Jordan Love is inexperienced. He's had a good first real year being the starter, but he's inexperienced. He's going to be under a lot of pressure. I don't like them here. Like, as much as I'd love to see an upset, I don't see it happening. 31-17 Cowboys.
I think I'll go up a little bit because it's usually feast or famine at home for them.
They score a lot at home.
That's what I'm saying. So I'll go 38-20. I'll think
Jair might not be playing. Good luck with CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
Nobody's been better than him down the stretch. He's been killing it.
I'll go 38-20, and that last touchdown is going to be a fourth quarter garbage one for the Packers. It's just going to be, they're going to pull their guys.
Yeah.
Also,
Cowboys by 2 scores plus, I think.
Yeah, agree on this one. And man, if it's close. If it's close, it's going to be a fun second half because that crowd is going to be like the crowds here in DC used to be when we couldn't win a playoff series. It's going to be a fun vibe, I think.
Tensest crowd of the weekend will be Lions at home. They get a home playoff game, first time in a while that's happened. Stafford's back. McVay knows how to coach. Lions got all the pressure in the world. And if the game's tight, Campbell might do something nuts.
Remember, we made a lunch bet the other night on this game.
We did, and I'm going to stick with it. I mean, if the Lions will go for 8 fourth downs in this game. Like, they're nuts.
Right.
Okay, they're nuts. I do think they're a better team.
Yeah,
I don't like the Rams defense at all. I think the Lions will game this thing up, and I think they'll win. Stafford pulling off a couple magical Stafford things probably happens, and there's no way this is a blowout. This game's going to be close because McVay's not getting blown out. I just think the better team at home, and those people are going to be berserker in that place on Saturday night. Give me the Lions 27-20. I'll take them by a touchdown. I think it's a one-score game, and I just think the Lions have a better team, and they're going to win.
I am going full-blown Rams here. I've been sniffing this one. If this was going to be the storyline, Rams win this 27-23.
They will lose next week, the Rams. The Lions have half a shot next week. The Rams do not.
But in this one, I've had
Cowboys or 49ers, forget it.
I've had this one circled. The Lions have been wonky lately, the last couple weeks of the season. Stafford being really, really good this last month of the season, no one's really talked about because everyone's written them off. He's going back there to Detroit. I'm telling you, man, McVay knows how to do this, and McVay's gonna keep the cooler head, and that's what's gonna win them this game. Campbell's done some dumb things over the last month,
crazy
too.
stuff. As I told you, he said, like, when he did that thing in Dallas, I went, if he does, it's all well and good now, but if he does it in the playoffs, people are going to talk about you're nuts.
McVay, I'll never forget it. Remember McVay versus Belichick in the Super Bowl? They were both waiting for the other one to make a mistake. Remember it was like 12-9 in the second half.
Right.
It was like the lowest scoring Super Bowl ever for those guys. McVay's going to do the same thing. He's going to wait for Campbell to get wonky and we're going to bite your kneecaps. And he's going to wait for him to do something stupid, and he's going to take advantage. I'm picking the Rams on the road.
I'll take the Lions. I really do want to see the Lions play the Cowboys again because I think that
would be fun.
That's the tense Dallas crowd. They should have beat them the first time. So that's the tense Dallas crowd if that happens again. I'll take the Lions here and get that rematch.
I like this, by the way. Sunday night, actually starting at 8 o'clock on Sunday. Not 8:25, not 8:15, 8 o'clock. We'll hopefully be in bed by 11.
On free TV, too, which is really great. Appreciate that. We have a show Monday?
Yes, we do.
Then I'll talk about the Eagles on Monday.